Alright, in this video I'm going to mount up a set of tubeless tires onto my mountain bike, or at least I was supposed to. I do mount a tire in this video and I will put a timestamp to where that begins. But that's an old tire and I'm pretty sure I've pretty much ruined these new tires I got. So I got some mail order stuff from a place in the States. I got Schwalbe Racing Rays, that's the front tire, and I'm pretty sure I've ruined that tire completely. And the other one's a Schwalbe Racing Ralph, which is the rear tire, and that one seems dangerous on my bike. I got a Stan's tire sealant injector and a bottle of Stan's sealant. I also got some Shimano brake pads, but I don't do anything with the brake pads in this video because I already got a brake pad video. The tires I used to have on my bike were Continental X Kings. These are 29-inch tires, and the wheel set is a Sun Ringley Black Flag SL Pro 29-inch set, but they're Stan's no tube rims. So I'm going to just let the air out of these X Kings. I'm actually going to take them inside, wash them up, and get ready to put on the Racing Ralph. So when you put on your tire, just look for the rotation direction. You can see it's supposed to spin that direction. I usually do the rear one first, and I just spin the cassette to see which direction it's going to want to spin the wheels. So once I line that up, it's pretty easy to tell which way the tire should mount on the rim. If you just look at the bike, it does make it a little bit more challenging. So I think this is the easiest way to do it. To get the tire on, all you need to do is get that one side on first. Perhaps you've mounted tires before. If not, it can be difficult. This one's very difficult to get the one side on. And then when I go to get the other side on, it gets extremely difficult. And it actually turns out to be the most difficult tire I've ever mounted on a rim ever. So quite amazing. I don't have a whole lot of tips on getting that first side on. It's generally pretty easy, and normally it's best to finish at the valve stem. Okay, so there's the first side on. Again, not bad. It only took a few minutes of struggle. I usually check to make sure that it's mounted the right way, so give it another spin, because you don't want to get the second side on, go through all this effort, and then find out you put it on the wrong way. And as it turns out, you definitely don't want to do it with this tire, because I can't actually get it off my bike anymore. I've broken all my tire levers trying to do that, and I may have to cut it off, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm not through with this tire quite yet. For the other side, obviously it's the more difficult side. Just work it around. Try to get the bead into the center valley of the rim. Makes it a little bit easier because it's got a little bit less height. But you can see there's actually a lot of tire left to get on this rim. And it is actually getting pretty difficult there. So that's about 20% of the tire left to get on. And it's hard. So that's not a good spot you want to be in. And it turns out that this is extremely difficult to get over that rim. So we're going to fast forward 4 hours into the night. I'm now inside in the basement, and I do have the rear tire mounted. But it did take 4 hours of struggle, so you would never do this on the trail. You would never do that during a race. I was also trying to get the front tire on, and I can't even get one side of this thing on. It's insane. It's about 25% hanging off the wheel. So I'm trying to do a bit of a stretch. Obviously this is going to ruin your tire. I contacted the company I got these from, and they said they can't take bike tires back, but they assured me that it's just because these tires are new and they'll just stretch out. So I got them in the floor jack. I got wood underneath so that it doesn't pinch on the steel, and I got, obviously it's wood on top. So after about an hour in the jack, again, this is just the first side, and it's significantly far off. And I'm not sure why it's so tight, but it is extremely tight. What I learned from the first tire is possibly the best way to put an extreme amount of force onto the tire is to put it up on the corner of a wall like this one with the wood, jam one edge into your stomach, and then just reef it forward. I found that way put the most pressure on the tire, but even doing that and getting right into it, I can't get that one side even over the rim. So I put it back in the jack, put it under a bit of tension. Again, don't do this if you want to keep your tire. I'm just doing this to see if I could actually get this thing on, stretched out. And I'm going to leave it in the jack overnight. So as for the rear wheel, you need to lock the bead of the tire into the rim, and it definitely helps to get a little bit of soap and water in there, and that's going to allow the bead of the tire to pop into the rim a little bit more freely. Now I tried to use a floor pump on this, but the tire is just so tight there's no way that this is going to move it, so I do end up going to the air compressor for everything, and it takes about 60 psi before the bead actually pops into the rim securely. I don't think I'd ever achieve that with the floor pump, and I'm going to move on from that. Now I was also trying to decide if I'm going to continue to fight with this thing and put it on my bike. As it turns out, I don't. But this has been sitting in the floor jack for over 10 hours. And still I can't get even one of the sides of the tire on. And I probably wrestled with this one side for about an hour. So even after being placed under a huge amount of pressure with the floor jack, it hasn't really loosened up at all because it is a Kevlar bead and it is absolutely brutal. So here's how you actually mount up your bike tire for a tubeless setup. So the tire I'm using here is a Bontrager Team Issue, 29er as well, obviously, and it's about 6 years old. As you can see, this one's also pretty difficult to get onto the rim, but it's entirely doable with about a minute of hard work. Very reasonable. Now as for the other side, obviously again the second side's always a little bit more difficult to get on. This one's obviously much easier than the Schwalbe tire I was trying to get on earlier. So you can see how much of the tire is still left to get onto the rim, and I think that's a very reasonable amount left over and very doable. However, when the tire is super tight and you still have 25% of the tire to get back on, it's not really reasonable anymore. So to get this Bontrager tire on the wheel, it took about 2 minutes and a lot of force, but obviously very achievable. So once again, I'll use the soap and water to put on the tire to get it ready to go, and I'm going to use the air compressor right out of the gate just to get out of the hand pump business. So I set the compressor setting pretty high to 100 psi. However, I don't fill the tire that high. I just use that to give it a good strong blast of air. Now since I can't find any of my Presta to Schrader adapter valves, I'm just going to make one out of a Presta valve cap. Basically just cut the end off, and you're left with that, and I'm going to put that upside down onto the Presta valve. And you can see how the cap fits into the air compressor nozzle. So I'll put the cap on, like I said, upside down onto the Presta valve, and now I have a Presta Schrader adapter ready to go. So once again, take the soapy water, rub it around the rim and tire, and get it ready to inflate with the air compressor. Now the bead of the tire pops right into the rim straight away with this, and there's no difficulty whatsoever. And this is exactly how this should work. Once the tire's set on the rim, pump it up to about 30 psi and just make sure that it's actually mounted properly. There should be a line on the tire pretty close to the rim. Just make sure that it's pretty even all the way around. And when you spin the tire, just make sure it doesn't have an obvious hop in it. Now you should be able to deflate your tire and the bead will still stay attached to the rim. It should not pop out by just deflating it. And now I'm going to add the stands sealant. For this I'm only using 2 ounces of this sealant. Normally I would use 4 for a 29-inch wheel. However, because I plan on replacing this front tire, I'm only going to use the 2 ounces for now so I don't waste the whole bottle on something I'm just going to take off in a week or two from now. Now the plastic nozzle's threaded, so you can actually screw it onto either a Presta valve or a Schrader valve. And once it's on, just push down on the plunger and inject all the tire sealant. Once the tire sealant is in the tire, I'm going to take the valve and put it back in the valve stem and get ready to pump up the tire. Now, like I said, because the bead of the tire is still firmly secured in the rim, it's very easy to use the standard floor pump to put air in the tire. In this case, I went to 40 psi. I find that when you mount the tire for the first time, it does lose a little bit of air initially, so having it a little bit higher is fine. And once the air's in the tire, you can give it a good spin, twist it around, and make sure that the stand sealant is thoroughly distributed within the tire. After that, you can put it back on your bike and it's good to go. Now I'm going to try one more time with the Schwalbe Racing Ralph here that I've got stuck on my rear wheel. For this, I found that I had to get it to about 60 psi before the tire bead would pop into the rim. And what I also found was that the tire bead would blow itself out of the rim when you get down to low pressure. I'm not too happy about having a tire that spontaneously pops itself off the rim, and I do have it videotaped so you can see how it pops itself off the rim. Overall, this job should actually only take about an hour to an hour and a half to get done for both wheels. Unfortunately, it took me about 24 hours of intermittent work. So this is how the tire pops itself off the rim. I'll just drop the air pressure and you'll see it spontaneously pops off the rim. So obviously that's with no pressure, but also I'm not really touching the wheel either. So it shouldn't pop off like that. And I am concerned that if I were to run that at about 20 psi, that it would also do that while I was riding it. So for these wheels, I will definitely never get this brand of tire again. If the question is, can they be mounted on the wheel? I guess the answer to that is, I guess, maybe. I was able to get 50% of the tires onto the rims. However, like I said, I do find that the rear wheel is pretty sketchy in that it kind of blows itself off the rim fairly spontaneously because of how tight the tire is in the rim itself. You would never want to have to remove one of these tires or put it on if you're out riding on the trail. You would never want to do that in a race situation. So there's not a lot of areas I would want to actually have these on my bike for really any reason. And the other thing, these tires are great for hard and dry conditions, but if it was wet, you would also not want to take off these tires to put on a more aggressive tread pattern because you never want to put these tires back on. And quite honestly, I don't even know how I'm going to get that rear tire off the wheel. Although my Continental and Bontrager tires are also both fairly difficult to get on and off the wheels, they are both entirely doable. And entirely doable if you're out on the trail or in a race situation. You can get that back on your bike in 10-15 minutes, no problem. These Schwabes, not a chance. You will never do it. How does the new rear tire ride, you might ask? I don't know. It's fine, I guess, but with a brand new tire on the back and a 7-year-old tire up front, it's kind of difficult to tell if one's good or not. Anyway, hopefully I can make a video where I actually get some new tires on my bike and show you how to do it properly with a new set of tires. Thanks for checking out my video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.